And with this, it's my pleasure to introduce Maya Matthews from the European Commission, who will kindly give us an overview of the current state of the regulations. I think you all know Maya. She's the divisional head, who's in charge at DG Santé of the whole EU HTA endeavor. She has more than 20 years of experience in international and global and European healthcare policy, healthcare affairs. Since 8 years, she's with the Commission, and her background is a degree from Oxford and London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine in health policy and health management. Thanks very much for being with us, Maya.
Thank you very much for the nice welcome, Jörg. Actually, I've been in the Commission for 16 years, but it's fine, and it feels sometimes like longer. Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be here, and it's very nice to see such interest from everyone on our exciting HTA regulation. I'm going to run you through where we are. I think many of you who follow this very carefully are aware, but I'm aware that there's also some people in the room who might not be so familiar with the HTA regulation, and apologies to the people yesterday because there might be some overlap on my presentation yesterday. But first, if you can do the next slide, I wanted to just...
this one, the green one.
Okay, great.
If you want to point this one.
Okay, great. So I thought I would just start with a little bit about the landscape. The last time I addressed this convention in person was 2 years ago. And since then, we have a new commission. The world has changed quite significantly, and also the priorities and focus of the health landscape at the EU level has also shifted to a situation where we really need to stress the competitive nature of our health sector. We need to support, foster, and empower this competitiveness and innovation. So we have a new commissioner as well for health and animal welfare, Commissioner Vajhelyi, and each commissioner is given a mission letter. It's like a bond thing, you know, you're given your mission. And in the mission letter, which is given by the President of the European Commission, there were some key tasks that had to be done. And so we have already completed 2 of the tasks. One of them was the cybersecurity plan for hospitals and healthcare. And I think this also speaks to the whole digital transformation of health systems. And I think this is also something key for us to take on board with the HTA and the use of digital tools, especially in data and AI. And we have, of course, the European Health Data Space, which can also provide, when it's up and running, very good secondary data. So the security plan of hospitals and healthcare providers, that action plan was already adopted in the first 100 days. And that is also important to recognize the fact that health has been singled out here because from what we understand across the EU, the health sector is now very much a target of cyber attacks. And so there is an agency, a dedicated cybersecurity agency, European agency, and they will develop a health sectoral work there. And then very recently, 2 weeks ago, the Critical Medicines Act was adopted. And here I just want to also bring it to your attention that within the Critical Medicines Act, there is a section on procurement where joint clinical assessments have been linked, that it could be one of the conditions, eligibility criteria for a joint procurement if the member states so wish. So these are the 2 initiatives that have already been adopted and I think are very relevant to your work. And then there will be an upcoming European Biotech Act, and that I think will take a bit longer, but there I think that the whole community is engaged. But this is also a very good opportunity to also raise awareness about the innovative and nature of HTA, because when I've been doing this now for 2 years, the HTA portfolio, and I still see very much lack of understanding and awareness about what HTA is. It's still very much a niche tool. And I hope that with this EU regulation, it will kind of embed and integrate, HTA will be integrated in the pharmaceutical work, in the medical devices work, because it's a tool that's been used very well by a few countries, and now the whole aim of the EU regulation is really to mainstream it, to involve all member states in this very useful tool, as Jörg said, about really bringing together evidence. And then obviously, let's not forget that the adoption of the pharmaceutical review, the negotiations between the co-legislators is still ongoing. And of course, there is also will be the targeted review of the medical devices regulation. So this is the environment that we find ourselves in, which I think is very positive for HTA, because as I said, HTA is definitely seen as a driver for competitiveness. I'm doing the slides. Okay, so now where are we? As Jörg said, the HTA regulation is now formally in application. That's the jargon that we use, which means that all of the things that you read in the regulation, which I should have brought it with me, is a very slim regulation compared to some regulations, but it's packed with stuff to do. It took a long time for this regulation to come to fruition. It didn't come out of the blue, and this regulation now is done on the basis of a lot of work, 20 years worth of work, and I'm very glad to see so many people in the room who've worked so hard to make this a reality. It started, as everyone knows, with the UNETA joint actions and service contract, and then not only was the service contract for member states, but also many stakeholders were also involved. So in a way, it made my job easier, because I can stand on the shoulders of so many people who have brought this to fruition. However, I think it's important to mention that being a legislation does put in certain conditions, and it does change a little bit the way we can operate, because now the work that is done is part of the EU acquis, as they call it, another jargon phrase, but it also means that it becomes part of a legislative framework, and this framework then can be questioned in court, so we need to make sure that what we do is really rigorous and is following the legislation. The HTA regulation is one of the deliverables of the pharma strategy. So as I said, the HTA regulation is very much embedded in the whole overall pharmaceutical work. And just to recap, the idea is to establish a framework and procedures for member states to cooperate on health technologies at union level. It's also, as Jörg said, a way to bring together clinical data. It's a way to analyze it together. So it's really about bringing together people, experts, but also developing common rules and methodologies. As Petra said, a kind of single gateway. I like that phrase that she mentioned. And then let's not forget the vision. And the vision is, and we saw the last slide about the time to market access. The vision is that by doing this work collectively at a very early stage, it will help the member states kind of accelerate their decisions. And so I think this is something that people really underestimate the power of. So we are creating a joint report that then 27 member states have that report, and they can use that report. At the moment, it's very uneven. Some member states don't have the report. They wait for others. Others do it themselves, but then they might not have all the information. So this is really a very powerful signal that we're sending, that now all of the European ministries of health or bodies that make the decisions will have the data all together, and more importantly, they've all endorsed it together. So where some of the key principles of the HTA regulation is, again, that we really want to focus on quality. So it's really about creating very high quality, and that's why I think there's so much interest in the methodologies and how we can really also harness new tools, how we can try and find ways to really raise the bar on evidence-based decision-making, as Jörg always mentions. And then, of course, transparency. So we will publish a lot of the data. That the joint clinical assessment report will be published. We will put as much information as we can in the public domain so that everyone is aware of what is going on. We also have quite strict rules around, but I'll talk about that later, about the conflicts of interest, because this all has to be done in a respectful framework of trust. And there is also a very strong push, and as I said, it's the first legislation that I've seen that systematically calls for the engagement and consultation with clinicians and patients. And so this is also setting a precedent worldwide, I would say. There are some countries that have a lot of experience in consulting patients and clinicians in doing HTA, but other countries don't. So we are also very aware, and this is why we are working very closely with members of the stakeholder network to really make sure that this is a meaningful participation. And then, as you know, HTA is so closely linked to the organization and funding of healthcare systems that it's a very delicate balance governance-wise. And I think Nicholas, the co-chair of the coordination group, will speak more about this. But just to say that the analysis work, the scientific work that is going to happen is very much driven by the member states. So it's not European Commission officials sitting, doing this work. It's the people from your countries, people from the HTA agencies in your countries who are actually going to be looking at the data, compiling the JCA report. And just again to recap that the member states are responsible for drawing the conclusions, the economic evaluations, and taking the decisions. And then maybe another key principle that sometimes is forgotten is that we recognize that this is a big endeavor, and so we have a progressive implementation. We're not starting with everything. We're not doing a big bang. So we're starting slowly, and I think my next slide doesn't say it. So we're starting slowly, meaning that on medical devices, we will have a selection. The coordination group will make a recommendation to the Commission on the selection of only high-risk medical devices that have gone through the expert panel opinions. And for the medicines, we will start with new active substances for oncology and ATMPs. And we will only look at those. Those are the only products that are in scope until 2028, where we will also include orphan medicines. And just to give you an idea of, as I said, the regulation is very short and sweet, but it basically provides, it's like the big tent, and then we have to start filling in everything in the tent, and that is called implementing regulations. So these are also legislative documents, but they are providing much more detail on the procedures. And so the whole course of last year, we have to adopt 6 implementing regulations. 2 of these are horizontal in nature. So one of them is the procedural rules on the cooperation with the EMA, and this is a very key implementing act because it really sets out the type of information that the EMA is sharing with the HTA Secretariat in the European Commission. So we understand that there are confidentiality issues, that this regulation is really to prepare and to show that we are taking the confidentiality of the data very seriously. And so we actually have a legislative act clearly spelling out what kind of data EMA shares, when, and with who. And then the second horizontal implementing regulation is on the management of conflicts of interest. This, again, is very important because for these reports to be taken on board by the member states, they have to be done in an environment that is conflict of interest free. This is something that's stipulated in the regulation. And so, again, this was the first of its type. We did an implementing regulation which spells out very clearly how we manage the conflicts of interest, what they are, and these are all available on the web. And then we did 4, and now we're working on the 4th, but we've already adopted 3 implementing regulations. providing very much the information on the different steps in the procedures of the joint clinical assessment. And these implementing regulations are really about the relations between the different actors. So the difference between these implementing regulations and the procedures and the guidance that the coordination group are doing is that these ones are really about the relations with the different actors and when these take place. This was the empowerment that the European Commission was tasked to do, to fill in more detail. And then, as we see here, and I mentioned yesterday in the meeting on medical devices, we are currently in the process of developing the procedural rules for the joint clinical assessment for medical devices. And yeah, so just here to recap, so the joint work with the regulation on HTA is, here's the slide that I was looking for, so I won't go through this too quickly, but just to say that the joint clinical assessments, this is the staggered process for medicines, and then also we have joint scientific consultations, and this is very important, and we're again working with the EMA, so I think that's also exciting, the fact that you can apply for a joint scientific consultation either just on HTA or in parallel with the EMA. We work very closely with EMA. I'm very glad to see Michael here. He is our constant companion in this journey, and just for your information, we've already launched one request period, and the next request period will be in June. So this is to show that it's actually, the work is starting. And then there is also an Emerging Health Technologies annual report. This is also to guide the coordination group. So it's about horizon scanning. It's really looking to help the coordination group plan their resources, plan their capacity. And the report is due in September 2025. The main report will be confidential because it has confidential information, but there will be a part of it that will be also publicly available. And then, so just to explain how the division works. So the Commission is doing these implementing regulations, which are legislative, which are published in the official journal. But then the coordination group and its subgroups are also working very hard on methodological and procedural guidance, going more in detail to support the efforts to provide further guidance to the HTDs, but also to themselves, to all of the assessors, because it is a huge leap from working at a national level or working in a project to actually working together where you're sharing the burden of the work. So it means that it has to be much more uniform. It means that the assessors and co-assessors all work on the similar guidance so that it is kind of interoperable, if you like. And some of this guidance has already been adopted. All of the guidance is available on the European Commission website. And then how do we do this joint work? How does it actually happen? What does it look like? So here again, in the co-legislators made quite a good, I think, decision where they basically said that all of this work has to take place on a very secure IT platform. I think that was very good because, I think gone are the days of having to all come in physical meetings. We are now in a time where we can work virtually, we can work quicker, because part of this, remember, is really about the time pressure. It's really about working quickly so that this information is available quickly. So we've created this secure IT platform. It's based on a SharePoint model. It is secure. We have, that's the paramount. The first step is that it has to be secure. It's got many security levels to it, and it has different workflows. So there's one workflow on the joint clinical assessments. There's another workflow on the joint scientific consultations. It has a co-authoring feature. So again, it limits any type of security breaches. So all of the work is done within this system. And just to say that for the HTDs, so the HTDs are first involved in the IT platform when they submit the letter of intent. So when an HTD sees that there is a product that they're working on that would fall in the scope of the HTA regulation, They will inform the HTA Secretariat. All of this is available on the website. And then we create an individual space for that HTD, and it has to be a named person. It can't be a functional email. And then that is the contact point that we have. And so we keep these firewalls really secure. So there's no mixing of different spaces. So you get a number, and then that is the space that you will work in as the HTD, and you will receive the documentation in that space so that no one else can go in that space. And the only people who have access to that space is the HTD and the Commission Secretariat. And we provide regular HTD webinars, which are chaired by the coordination group chairs and with the subgroup chairs as well. And that we will add now, with these regular webinars, we will add a training kind of session explaining how this works, and also questions can be asked. So this is a little bit about how the different actors engage in this IT platform. And then we also have the stakeholder network. So the stakeholder network, and I just wanted to show you the makeup of the stakeholder network. Again, the stakeholder network is not just a luxury, for us to inform. The stakeholder network members are intimately involved in the joint work. It's very exciting to see, the engagement, interests, and see this forum really coming alive, because the coordination group members also participate in the stakeholder network. So it's really a forum for the member states to also engage with the stakeholders in this forum. But the stakeholder network is actually mentioned in the legislation, in the implementing regulation, for the identification of patients and clinicians. So they are our privileged partners. We count on them to identify the patients and clinicians. And we opened a second call, so it's been running for 2 years. We opened a second call for applications, and we got a lot of applications, 35 new members. A lot of them were from professional organizations, patients' organizations, and a few more health technology associations. So we were very happy about that. So now we have this great resource across Europe, a fantastic pool of members. So we really hope that this will be the way that we can also then feed back. And in terms of the evaluation, what we will do is create a working group within the stakeholder network to look at the review and look at the evaluation, because I think it's very important that this review has to look at the HTA regulation from all the different angles. And so I think that the stakeholder network is the right place to co-create some of this work. And then finally, I think, as I said in the beginning, I think we all need to work further on raising awareness about this HTA regulation. I think it's everyone who's involved in this has a role to play. We work very closely with Rui, who is here. I'm very pleased to see you, Rui, the head of the HTA agencies group. And so very early on we said we need to work with you, and we organized we co-organized regional workshops across Europe. And I think this was again, and many of you I think were probably participated in them, but this was again a way to also raise this on the ground, because I think the key now, and this shows in this regulation more than maybe others, is the important role at EU level, but then also the important role at national level and even regional, in where health systems are federated. So we need to be really, really aware that in our bubble we know what HTA is. I live and breathe it 24/7, but a lot of other people have no idea. And especially here, it's a challenge to the industry members here. I think it's very important that you inform your affiliates, because as we said, for the pharmaceuticals, we don't have a selection. We can't select what's coming up. It's actually you who is selecting what's going to be in scope. So it's very important that you inform your affiliates about this. And then we have these regular webinars, and I think that the next webinar, I've put May, but I think it's probably going to be end of May, early June. We have to check with the coordination group chairs on that. And then I just wanted to also announce to everyone that we're also organizing a conference, a high-level conference in Brussels on the 2nd of July, to kind of look to kind of of launch, if you like, the application process, look back a little bit, but also look forward. And we're also inviting some international guests because we also want to show how the HTA regulation is also being viewed from other parts of the world. And so the registrations will be opening very soon, either the end of this week or next week. And finally, and then we're also doing fact sheets, and all of this is available on the web because we understand that it's quite complicated. And so we're trying to provide as much information as we can. We are also planning to publish Q&As on specific areas because we do get a lot of questions from many stakeholders. And then finally, I just wanted to leave you with a few comments, reflections from my side. So I think we've all seen that the HTA framework is a game changer. It is affecting how people are approaching access and also methodology and clinical evidence and evidence gathering. I think it will have an impact on everyone. We were just discussing with Valentina about how patients now all of a sudden feel like, wow, we're actively involved. We're being asked to do something now that's part of a legislation. What does this mean at the European level? But then also, what does it mean then at national level, where countries maybe are not consulting? So it will have ramifications there. And then I think that in this period where we're starting, and this I think is true for all of us, but specifically on this one I wanted to raise it. Collaboration and mutual trust is essential. So the last two and a half years have been a really big trust building exercise within the coordination group, with the subgroups, but also within the network, the stakeholder network, with the industry. You know, we all have a part to play here, and we all have to be seen as trusted partners in this. And it's also a learning process because, as I said, when you jump from a project to a legislation, many of the people involved have never worked on EU legislation before, and so there is a steep learning curve. And then I guess that on the third point is that we need to communicate. We need to communicate amongst ourselves more, but we also need to communicate more with the general public, with the ministries of health, to just inform what the HTA is about. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks very much, Maya, for this comprehensive and excellent overview. I think the regulation and the word and the language of the regulation is one side, and the interpretation by the people who are running the regulation is the other side. And I'm, let's say, the last 2 years and all your engagement is really building trust and doing the best to implement the language of the regulation in the best possible way.